Brandon, I know your bar for wide receivers is about as high as bars go, but is DeAndre Hopkins, in your opinion, the best wide receiver in the NFL?
This is hard. You know, over the last 13, 14 years when we had these discussions, you got to look at, situations. There's so much to this, to the success of a wide receiver. We are the one position on the field where our success is in the hands of so many others. Play caller, offensive coordinator, quarterback, offensive line. So when you look at like who is who and ranking these guys, it's almost impossible. So this is how I've, put together my list. All right. And there's a lot of guys out there that is more than capable of being in the top 3 to top 5. I want to show you a graphic because I don't want to be walking the streets and these guys get mad at me. Mike Evans is a guy that can easily be number 1 if everything was equal. You got Odell Beckham Jr. You have Devontae Adams. You have even Adam Thielen. These guys can easily go for 1,500, 1,600 yards if everything was equal. But let's bring it back to the question. Let me answer that for you. Who do I believe is number 1? And how do I look at it? When a game is on the line, can you beat 1-on-1? Can you beat man on man? That's what I look at. And there's 3 guys that's at the top of my list. DeAndre Hopkins. That's Mike T down in New Orleans. Okay? And that's also Julio Jones. So if I had to pick one guy, I'm going with Julio Jones because Julio Jones, he has this unique skill set, size, speed. He make the tough play in the clutch. So for that reason, I got to go with him. But I've said DeAndre's been the number 1 receiver for the last couple years. But if I'm starting the team right now, I'm going with Julio Jones. But it's hard, Nick. It's really hard to pick.
It's almost impossible to pick. Here is the best case you can make for DeAndre. He is one of the only receivers in the league, and in this way, Brandon, he reminds me of you, where his production is independent of the play at quarterback. So can we just show 2 years from DeAndre Hopkins? They are startlingly similar. The 2015 season and the 2018 season. He has, look at those numbers. Those are almost carbon copy years. The difference is this. In 2015, his quarterbacks were Brian Hoyer, Ryan Mallett, TJ Yates, and Brandon Weeden. Those were his quarterbacks in 2015.
Ryan Mallett?
In 2018, it was 4 games of Ryan Mallett. In 2018, it was Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
And so as great as Julio is, Jenna, the argument for DeAndre would be Julio's been matched up with Matt Ryan his whole time. DeAndre was a first-team All-Pro caliber season when Ryan Mallett and TJ Yates were throwing him passes, and he was a first-team All-Pro caliber receiver when the great Deshaun Watson was throwing him passes. So I think I agree with Brandon. It's incredibly hard to pick one, but that is a feather he has in his cap that Mike Thomas, who's played with Drew Brees his whole career, and Julio Jones, who's played with Matt Ryan his whole career, Jenna, do not have.
So, Nick, let me ask you, 2 years, $54 million. Did the money in this deal surprise you at all?
Well, the way it was reported surprised me. Brandon, this is a little, finagling of the media, if you will, or manipulation of the media. He's not getting $27 million a year because he had 3 years and 40 left on his deal. So you've got to look at it as 5 years, $94 million. So as Jenna crunched the numbers before the show, just under $19 million per year, which is right in line with all of the top receivers in football. So, yeah, Brandon, $27 million a year would have been an exorbitant sum, but when you're just tacking it on to an undervalued deal that has 3 years left, it honestly reminded me, if I'm correct, of what happened with you. When you went from Chicago to the Jets traded for you, but they knew your contract was a little too cheap for a man of your stature, and so as soon as you got there, they reworked it. So that's to me what was going on here, and we knew this was going to happen once they made the trade.
No, it's an opportunity, and players and coaches know there's so much that goes behind the scenes when you see a player traded. A lot of times we think that as fans, as people watching it, oh, this guy was just traded overnight. No, sometimes this is in the works for weeks or even months. So for me, there's been so many times, and I hate to say that, but there's been 3 times where I've been traded, And literally for weeks and months, my agent was working behind the scenes. He was telling teams not to trade for me. We put a list together and we tried to dictate where I went. The situation from Chicago to New York, that was part of the deal. When I reached out to Coach Bowles, I said, Coach Bowles, I would love to play for you again. I would love to be there, but you have to sweeten up the pot a little bit for me. And it was an opportunity. Did they have to do that? No. But as a player and as an agent, you know there are opportunities when a player goes from another team midway through their contract, and maybe that team is not as good, then you know, like, hey, if you want me there, you got to pay me a little bit of extra. The Cleveland Browns, amazing story. I remember Josh McCown were being at a church convention, and the Cleveland Browns was throwing everyone at me. Like, hey, we really want you. We really want you. We're going to pay you $14 million a year. Everyone else was like $10 million, $11 million. I looked at, I believe it was Ray Farmer at the time. I said, Ray, you will not trade for me. I will not come. I told Josh McCown, stop asking me. There's no way I'm coming. I will retire right now. I hate it because Ray's such a great guy, but it was the situation around all of Cleveland. I think Cleveland's good, but back then it wasn't.
Yeah, sure.
You don't have to apologize. Sure you didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Wiles. You didn't need to apologize.
You can't just tag on. I think Cleveland's good.
I don't want to tick
14
off the Cleveland Browns fans right now.
No, I'm sure you didn't. I'm sure it's a great town. You wouldn't step foot there for $14 million, but it's still great. It's a wonderful place. Would I go there for $14 million? Not a chance, but it's wonderful. A lot of great people there. Hey, Brandon, what was your take on DeAndre doing the deal himself? He said he did 90% of the deal himself. It was important for him to learn the terminology, and really he wanted to, felt like it was on his bucket list as he tries to become a GM. It's one of his aspirations. So he did the deal himself. I thought that was fascinating, all while he was also trying to learn Cliff Kingsbury's playbook. So what was your take on that?
Yeah. Well, my agent, Kennard McGuire, who just did the Clowney deal, he may not like this, but I think more players should do it because it's easy. We're already paying the NFLPA, our attorneys, to look at these very deals. So it's not hard. You understand the market. You understand your worth and your value as a player. All you got to do is lean on the NFLPA. I think more players should do it. So shout out to Hopkins for setting the tempo here for more receivers and more players to come.
All right, Jerry, if you're listening, my agent, I may or may not use you on my next deal. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.